stretch across 500,000 square miles of the world's deepest water. A heavenly necklace of coral atolls. Except there is little harmony in this paradise. More than 4 decades of American rule have left the 43,000 Marshallese in discord. Poverty and illness are companions in the street. Most of the young are jobless. Many of the old have only their memories. Michua Anja.
I don't like the American people or the American government. They have destroyed our culture.
For hundreds of years, the Marshallese were among the best fishermen and navigators in the Pacific. There was tuna from the water, copra from the land, but a tidal wave was coming from the modern world. In February 1944, Americans arrived here in force, beating back the Japanese who had claimed the Marshalls as a strategic base. By the summer of 1944, the last of the Japanese had been driven from their bunkers, including this one on the island of Roy Moore. The Marshallese had been liberated, but they were not going to be left alone. Under a UN agreement, the U.S. took charge of the islands as a trust territory and a key military outpost. Between 1946 and 1958, islands the Marshallese called home, the U.S. government would call ground zero.
3, 2, 1, fire!
66 atomic bombs were detonated on the evacuated islands of Eniwetok and Bikini. The Cold War was hot, and America didn't need to seek approval from anyone, least of all the Marshallese. It was history's most massive atmospheric testing program, and one of the U.S. military's most remarkable public relations campaigns.
Well, now then, James, will you tell them that the United States government now wants to turn this great destructive force into something good for mankind, something good for mankind.
All right, is that all?
Convinced or coerced, hundreds of Marshallese were removed from their home islands, but not from harm's way. On March 1st, 1954, the world's largest hydrogen bomb cracked the sky above Bikini with a force twice as great as scientists had expected, showering the islands with radioactive fallout. Children played in it as if it were snow.
Since the time of the bomb, things have never been right with the children. I had my thyroid taken out. My son died of leukemia. He was 1 year old at the time of the bomb.
Wow.
Michua and her husband John, like countless other islanders, were never warned about the bomb. At the time, John was mayor of Rongelap Atoll, and among a small group of Marshallese who were later brought to the U.S. for radiation testing and a lesson in arrogance.
These are fishing people, savage by our standards. The Marshallese caught by Paulo got 175 roentgens of radiation. Most humans are exposed to less than 20 roentgens in a lifetime. John, as we said, is a savage, but a happy, amenable savage.
For John and John, these black and white memories have drained much of the color from his life.
There were many more problems after the bomb. The women are giving birth to children that are not like human beings. Those that survive have trouble growing and mental retardation as well.
I lived with people who are what World War III would look like if World War III were to break out.
Glenn Alcalay was a Peace Corps worker here. He's just begun an island-by-island survey of the radiation's after effects.
We're still counting bodies out there. We still don't have any adequate picture of how extensive the damage is. We don't know how many thousands of people were caught in this fallout.
Recent medical studies confirm long-term effects are still appearing. In a 1986 study, 91% of the Marshallese tested had radiation-induced blood disorders, and the same report found double the normal rate of stillbirths and miscarriages.
I have several miscarriages.
Lejean Eknalang's 8th birthday fell on the day the bomb was dropped. 7 miscarriages later, she has not forgiven the United States.
I knew that if it wasn't what the United States have done for me and my family, my kids would be growing up like the others.
Was Bikini a mistake? Was Rongelap a mistake?
Oh, inevitably they were, but certainly not intentional mistakes.
Colonel Philip Harris commanded the U.S. military base on Kwajalein Atoll. He says Marshallese fears about long-term contamination are unwarranted.
Just from the standpoint of safety, would you go back to Bikini and live?
I've been on Bikini. There is absolutely no background radiation, zero. There's less background radiation on Bikini than there is in the capital of the United States. The only difficulty is the cesium.
That's cesium-137. It's contaminating island plants and topsoil. In 1985, the danger from lingering radiation prompted the environmental group RimPac to evacuate hundreds of Marshallese from Rongelap Atoll, but only after the U.S. government refused to relocate them. Nuclear nomads, the people of Rongelap, now live on an atoll more than 100 miles from their home. Rongelap Senator Jet Nanjan.
Our land is our sacred position. That's all here. And today our land has been destroyed. We cannot use it anymore. We cannot go there and live in peace because of the contamination.
Are you troubled at all by the American nuclear legacy here in the Marshall Islands?
No, I personally don't feel bad. In fact, I'm very proud that we, as many other nations, didn't just pick up and walk away and say, sorry about that, that's your problem.
Of course, that's precisely what the Marshallese claim has happened. Negotiating with the U.S. for their independence in 1986, the Marshallese agreed to a one-time payment of $150 million to cover all damages caused by the years of atomic testing. Marshall Island President Kaua says it was the price for freedom.
We lost many things in that compact. We regret them, but what can you do? I mean, when you grow up with your brothers and he's a lot bigger than you and he's slap you, what do?
That's not apathy, it's reality. That American big brother has stolen much of the soul and self-sufficiency of the Marshallese.
Our entire educational system, health system, transportation system, everything depends on 90% of it depends on the United States grants.
Tony DeBruin is a Marshall Islands senator.
The sun is practically set on Marshallese culture.
Eclipsed might be a better description. Consider Kwajalein Atoll, leased to the U.S. for the next 26 years. The Marshallese who once lived here have been moved to make way for the American military base. The lagoon where islanders once caught fish now catches incoming test missiles from California, 4,200 miles away. Heart-transplanted suburb, Heart Country Club, is home to some 3,000 Americans, but off-limits to the Marshallese. They're allowed to work here, but not to live.
On the right here, we have the brand new youth center, just completed construction. On the one side, it has a big dance floor, and on the other side, the games and so on and so forth.
From Kwajalein's manicured lawns and baseball parks, it's just 15 minutes across the lagoon to Ebi, home to many of the radiation exiles. Nearly 10,000 Marshallese jammed onto 78 acres of hot, treeless coral. Called the slum of the Pacific, it's among the most crowded places on Earth.
How many families are in some of these homes?
Oh, we're talking, one room would be maybe 10 by 10, and you have 3 families.
Julian Ricklin is a local government worker.
There are children everywhere.
Children everywhere. That's enough.
You see children on garbage dumps. Why are they playing on the garbage?
They're using this as a playground because there's no playground nearby.
Stalking the children and adults here is a cluster of diseases from both the first and third worlds.
There's children here who die directly from malnutrition.
Dr. Neil Palafax is with the U.S. Public Health Service.
And the kind of things like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension, stroke are occurring in much earlier ages.
What's more, the Marshallese have lost their old survival skills without gaining any new ones. Tuna comes from a can, not the ocean. And American TV safety and culture produce a wish list without creating a workforce. With few schools and fewer jobs, teenagers are taking their own lives at a rate 100 times that of the U.S., all in a society that 50 years ago had no word for suicide.
As an American citizen, I'm ashamed of what our government has done to these islands. This is what it looks like after 45 years of strategic rule in a tiny colony. This is made in America.
So the Marshall Islands have become a sort of third world laboratory for American culture, with the experiments more often than not running amok. That's why some of the Marshallese are simply petrified at the latest made-in-America plans for these islands. One includes turning parts of their homeland into the world's largest garbage dump.
It's a win-win situation for both parties because it will help take care of part of the solid waste problem on the West Coast, and it'll create land for the land-starved Marshallese.
Dan Fleming is president of Micromar. His California company wants to ship upwards of 10% all West Coast municipal garbage, that's 3 million tons a year, to a landfill he wants to build on the northern tip of Ebi.
These people have been irradiated, they have been economically exploited, they've been forced to migrate from their own home islands, and now you want them to become guardians of the garbage, our garbage.
I can understand why there is opposition to this. I mean, this project obviously has some public relations problems.
To say nothing of the technical ones. According to the EPA, even household garbage, the kind Micromar wants to send to the Marshalls, contains toxic waste like batteries, paint thinners, and pesticides. 8 pounds of it per ton. Fleming says the landfill's liner will be state-of-the-art, which means its safety is in the eye of the beholder.
Could this be punctured? Could you get a hole in this?
Not very easily.
Could happen.
Could happen. Just, again, there are no absolute guarantees. As far as I'm concerned, it's a fail-safe thing from the Marshallese environmental position. Micromar is taking a real chance. Obviously, Micromar will also reap huge profits if it works, but that's the way the system works.
But if there's pollution, it's going to be the Marshallese. If there's contamination, it's going to be the Marshallese who pay the price.
I wish I could guarantee perfection, but I can't.
What Fleming can guarantee is money for the Marshall Islands, perhaps $20 million a year to be custodians of American trash. And to buy their economic freedom from Uncle Sam, the Marshallese leadership is even considering accepting U.S. nuclear waste.
The Speaker of your Parliament is quoted as saying, a lot of the atolls are already contaminated. A couple more containers of nuclear waste won't make any difference.
Well, yes, that's what the people say. If the island, we're going to go back to it.
You might as well put a few more barrels in.
It's better to earn some money out of the situation than having nothing.
Unfortunately, some of our leaders have become easy prey for American entrepreneurs, carpetbaggers who come up with these bizarre ideas of development. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. We've suffered enough. Keep your waste, but don't dump it on us.
This little thing came out of a January Eco Roundtable meeting when someone from the Sierra Club in January said, you know, RimPac is coming, and the environmental community ought to get together and educate the community about what's going on with RimPac. So we started this Oceans4Peace.org coalition with the Sierra Club, the Surfrider Foundation, Kauai Alliance for Peace and Justice, Pohakuloa, Whale Voice, and People for the Preservation of Kauai. 5 groups. And we're going to do more events when the RimPac folks get here. On January 21st, on Solstice, we're going to have a sign waving. June 21st on Solstice, we'll have a sign waving. We'll let you know about that. It'll be out in front of the Papayas Market and Kukui Grove. And we're also going to show another movie called America's Drone Wars. And that will be, I don't know, July 7th, I think, something like that. But we'll get the word out on that. But we really want people to know about the effect of RimPac on the environment. And I'm really grateful for the panel we put together and for the folks to have done some homework for us and to share their manaho on what they learned about military presence in the Pacific. And what the format tonight is going to be a panel discussion, because we figured there's a lot of knowledge in the room here that needs to be shared. So it's not just speakers. We're going to have, each speaker is going to have 15 minutes, and then we're going to open it up to the whole group. So it'll be a dialogue between the front of the room and everybody else, and I'll be moderating that. And I'm going to apologize in advance if any buttons are pressed wrong or any of the PowerPoints glitch or whatnot, but I think we got it down. And just so you know that Rob Zavlofsky is going to put this on Hawaii television too, so smile for the camera. All right, so our first speaker, you're going to speak, and then I'm going to play the video, right? Right. It's Juan Wilson, and those of you who know islandbreath.org, that's Juan. And also Juan is on the executive committee of the Sierra Club group here on Kauai. The Sierra Club is having their state meeting this weekend. Right now. Right as we speak. They're up there trying to decide who to endorse. It's not going to be a decision, I don't think. But so I'm going to give the thing to Juan, and he's going to talk a little bit. We're going to play a video. Go. So
these RimPac war games have occurred biennially for over 40 years. It amounts to a ceaseless war against Hawaii in the Pacific Ocean. The U.S. Navy has been damaging the seas and islands throughout the Pacific since making Pearl Harbor its strategic home port. From the end of World War II until 1962, the U.S. exploded over 100 thermonuclear devices in the Pacific Ocean, primarily in the Marshall Islands and Kiribati Islands, but as well as on nearby Johnston Island. In recent decades, several weapon systems have been developed and tested here at the PMRF on Kauai. Those systems include submarine-based multi-warhead nuclear ballistic missiles capable of ending life on Earth entirely. With RimPac, the PMRF is the wheelhouse for many activities, and many RimPac activities have damaged ocean flora and fauna. There'll be 23 nations participating. There'll be 43 ships, 200 aircraft, 6 submarines, as well as countless bombs, missiles, and torpedoes. There'll be 25,000 military personnel here for that event. RimPac plans to sink at least 3 naval ships in the process. Hawaii's reefs, beaches, dunes, valleys, and mountains are all RimPac targets. In the last 40 years, our land has been strewn with defoliants, lead, depleted uranium, unexploded munitions, and ordnance of all kinds. The sunken ships have carried pollutants like bilge remains, hydraulic fluids, PCBs, and other contaminants to the bottom of the ocean nearby. Until August, RimPac is permitted to kill and maim thousands of fish and marine mammals using high explosives and brain-crushing sonar. Besides the public relation hype and the schmoozing to fund additional military contracts, RimPac is a demonstration to the world that America will do anything to maintain control over the vast Pacific Ocean, if necessary, even killing it. We have more important issues than hypothetical threats to our national security. We face dire consequences of climate change that will raise the seas and play havoc with our weather. The entire Pacific is increasingly poisoned with radioactive cesium, strontium, and plutonium from the continuous Japanese catastrophe in Fukushima. Our reefs are dying from global warming, acidification, and pollution runoff. The megafauna of the Pacific have been hunted to near extinction. 90% of them are gone. We feel the U.S. Navy should set an example to the world. It should focus on healing the wounds in the ocean and to its creatures. The nations of RimPac should turn to protecting the Pacific Ocean. A good start might be to reorganize RimPac into an effort to clean up and recycle the 2 monstrous and deadly gyres of trash found north and south of these islands. In an article on May 23rd in the Garden Island, the PMRF commander Bruce Hay was quoted as saying this: "In between all the other cool stuff, like the rockets and the balloons and all the other stuff, you're going to see a steady drumbeat of our brothers and sisters in arms coming here to Kauai. It's a good thing for Kauai, and it's a good thing for the PMRF." No, it's not a good thing, and it's not cool stuff. The 10 minutes of this film that follows is a brief look back at recent RimPac activities. It shows amphibious landings and a new emphasis on urban combat in house-to-house situations. Is this for suppression of civilian populations? RimPac seems to be practicing littoral combat. That is, operations near the shore, including support for shore landings and other types of combat, shifting from water to ground and back. If you remember, the Super Ferry was an experiment to develop a new breed of naval ship capable of reaching shoreline war zones throughout the Pacific in the matter of just a few days. It is notable that one of the ships developed alongside the Super Ferry will be joining RimPac this year for the first time. The littoral combat ships are being developed to improve force maneuverability. They will also provide a platform for the deployment of small unmanned systems in littoral operations. What war in the Pacific is RimPac practicing for? Will it be conducted by drones and robots? We should keep in mind that Operation Dominic in 1962 on Johnston Atoll, more than 10 thermonuclear devices were detonated around the atoll. Some illuminated the skies throughout the Hawaiian Islands. This is 1962 at night. There's shots of Maui with blasts going off, shots from Honolulu if you've ever seen them. This was just 700 miles away from Niihau. The infrastructure for command and control developed to test these nuclear weapons seems to be the model for the use of the PMRF and the operation of RimPac. In fact, as part of Operation Dominic, the PMRF oversaw the launch of the Frigate Bird, a missile fired from the USS Ethan Allen off our shore on Kauai, delivering a thermonuclear detonation on the Christmas Islands. The PMRF and RimPac have been practicing for the end of the world as we know it for a long time. Their effort must be redirected now. Thank you. Time for the news.
Amidst a big push by the Defense Department to focus on the Pacific region, RimPac 2012 is heating up. Hello and welcome. I'm Petty Officer Michael Wilkin. The exercise in and around the islands of Hawaii involves U.S. Marines and Canadian Forces soldiers who are conducting urban combat training that will enhance multinational and joint interoperability. Marine Corporal Ben Eberly reports.
Get up on your feet. Hands behind your back.
Canadian forces are nearly 4,000 miles from their home base in Shiloh, Manitoba. The job of their American hosts? Try to make their visit as unpleasant as possible, at least for 3 days.
Basically what we're doing is we're being opposition forces for the Canadians, so that way they get the best training possible in the scenarios that we're running.
More than 120 Canadian soldiers operated with and went up against U.S. Marines to conduct urban combat training. It was part of this year's Rim of the Pacific exercise, or RimPac 2012, being conducted in and around the Hawaiian Islands.
It's a lot different than what we're used to. It's a lot more realistic, allowing troops to break through plateaus and get a better threshold on their soldier abilities.
The training also exposed U.S. Marines to new tactics, techniques, and procedures.
RimPac is conducted every 2 years and began back in 1971.
Alright, now put all your shoulder pressure in like you're gonna shoot and see if it's still on. 1,000 meters? Right, which is the same like the saw, but this long barrel. It's good for 1,000 meters suppression for accurately. So this thing all the way down has like, just like the RCO, how wide the little thing is, how wide the man's shoulder should be at that distance. It's good for up to 1,000 meters. And then up top here is really good for close quarters combat. It's just like an EOTech. It's got one little dot in the middle that doesn't matter what your eye relief is or anything like that. It's just gonna be right on the target. So it's really good for like close quarters when you're looking over your sights. You can have both your eyes open when you're going through a house, and wherever that little red dot is, that's where your rounds are gonna impact. So it's pretty sweet. And it's what, 3.5 magnification?
The Johnston Island portion of the 1962 Dominic Test Series, conducted by Joint Task Force 8, included two types of tests. One involved a number of high-altitude nuclear detonations carried aloft by various missiles launched from the island for a study of the effects produced by such detonations. And the other was a group of 5 airdrops over the ocean clear of the island, but within the Johnston Island danger area.
The high-altitude series had these basic objectives. First, there was an evaluation of the missile kill mechanisms produced by high-altitude detonations. Secondly, an investigation of the effects of such detonations on our electromagnetic surveillance and tracking capabilities, and on the maintenance of long-range communication systems. The purpose of this program was to provide points of departure for still further determinations.
The Starfish, Bluegill, and Kingfish tests were launched by a modified Thor missile. The missile carried externally mounted instrumentation pods for each event to collect data on blast overpressures and thermal and nuclear radiation as potential ICBM kill mechanisms. On the 8th of July, Starfish Prime, the second triad Starfish, was launched and was entirely successful. The warhead detonated at an altitude of 400 kilometers, 31 kilometers south of Johnston Island. This is how it appeared in still pictures from Maui Island in the Hawaiian chain. On 25 July, the Thor vehicle for Bluegill Prime had a one-of-a-kind casualty. Both missile and warhead burned on the launching pad. Damage to the pad was extensive, as could be plainly seen next morning. Less visible, but more dangerous, was the long-life radioactive contamination of the pad area from the warhead. It was obvious that this would cause a significant delay in the operation. The scheme for using an airborne test instrumentation array had been used during the Christmas Island series in a trial and backup role. The plan provided for an airborne package made up of the the B-52 drop aircraft, and Johnston Island as the advanced base for P-2B surveillance aircraft and for recovery of the sampler controllers and the radioactive samplers. On the carrier Princeton, underway in the drop area, overall control was maintained by the task force commander in flag plot.
Control, the kind of systems that were developed, the kind of things they were doing is what's going on at the PMRF. That's where it came from, Johnston Atoll. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Thank you again. Our next speaker is a former Kauai resident and author of the Super Ferry Chronicles.
Co-author with Gerrymander, sitting in the back there.
Peace and Justice, and I'm really hoping that all our technical stuff works.
Yeah, I need first slide to be on.
Okay, let's.
And I'll just say next slide, and then you just hit the next slide. Okay. Also, is this going to the video? You're just going off that? Yeah. Okay. A lot of notes here. No. Thanks everyone for coming, and especially thank you to Oceans4Peace, which is a great coalition of people. And I hope we could all stay talking to each other since we all live here. We all get affected by this. Hi, Terry. I see so many familiar faces. Great to be back. I'll wait for this slide. We've heard about RimPac. Now here's the bad news. RimPac is only a very small piece of a huge, systemized, cataclysmically destructive federal project. It's called the Pacific Pivot. The Pacific Pivot, how many people have heard of it? Okay, thanks, Ray. Keep the light up. The Pacific Pivot is a plan to reorient the U.S. military and our economic focus as well, away from Europe and the Middle East and toward the Asia-Pacific region. That's our region. We're now in its beginning stages. It was first announced in 2011. New bases are being built. New military agreements are being forged with Asia-Pacific nations. PMRF is ramping up for more rocket launches. The obnoxious Osprey helicopters are coming to PMRF and Oahu, having been chased out by the Okinawans. And huge swaths of ocean have been targeted by the Pentagon for continual year-round bombing and detonation. Our region is now witnessing an acceleration of militarization that resembles all-out war. And from an environmental point of view, it is no different from all-out war, rife with every kind of explosion imaginable. Even PMRF Commander Bruce Hay bragged how, quote, our ability to train like we would actually fight exists right here in these Hawaiian waters. For the natural world, the Pacific Pivot is nothing short of an environmental holocaust. Biodiverse ecosystems totaling over 3 million square miles of supposedly wild ocean have been officially set aside to be systematically poisoned, dredged, detonated, torpedoed, and bombed into non-existence, all in the service of military preparedness. Over 3 million square miles of open seas. That's roughly 3/4 the size of the entire United States of America. We in Hawaii are at the center of this ecocide. We're not only in the center geographically, we are also at the center of control. The Maui activist Kaua pointed out that the military in Hawaii is like a monstrous he'e, or octopus, with its head at Pacific Command overlooking Pearl Harbor, scopes, undersea sensors, and radar facilities, its brain and nervous system, the supercomputers and fiber optic networks that crisscross the islands, from California to Hawaii, to Guam, Okinawa, Australia, Singapore, Korea, Japan, Diego Garcia, all of which contain our bases, hundreds of our bases, over 400. The domination of the Pacific Command stretches from Alaska to Antarctica, from off the west coast of the United States to the Indian Ocean. PACCOM controls an entire hemisphere, and we in Hawaii are unsurpassed for sheer military firepower. The Pacific Pivot is the U.S. attempt to stake its claim in the Asia-Pacific region. Hillary Clinton, a huge cheerleader for the Pacific Pivot, has called the 21st century America's Pacific century. That's because the U.S. wants in on the booty of the Asia-Pacific, the planet's most resource-rich and economically dynamic region. Within 35 years, says the Asian Development Bank, the region will account for half of the world's economic output and include 4 of the world's 10 largest economies, those of China, India, Japan, and Indonesia. In order to cash in, an aggressive trade agenda accompanies the military push. I mean, you can't have McDonald's without McDonnell Douglas. Obama has been courting the Pacific Rim nations to sign on to the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, or TPP, which locks signatory nations into a US-dominated trade framework. It's been dubbed NAFTA on steroids. There is currently a push to fast-track the TPP despite protests from labor groups and environmentalists internationally. Now, to keep a US-dominated trade program like the TPP running smoothly, a strong military presence is necessary to ensure US dominance over shipping lanes, over cheap labor, over resources, and over the manufacturing supply chain. A big part of the Pacific Pivot also encompasses humanitarian relief. Ensuring U.S. dominance is not simply amassing ally nations to counter a rising China, nor is it limited to quelling riots by exploited, disgruntled workers, or anti-base protesters like us, or eco-terrorists like the folks at Greenpeace. No, a typhoon or an earthquake or a flood is just as threatening to the uninterrupted flow of goods from Asia to Walmart as is a political uprising. The idea is to keep the machine running smoothly and uninterrupted, no matter what. Humanitarian relief is not only great public relations, but it's essential for maintaining hegemony in the world economy. Next slide. So I call this my hotspots map, and what I've done is I've created a map of places that are being proposed and in the works to be the next militarized spots. These don't include the Marshall Islands, and these don't include bases in Japan and Korea and other islands that exist, American Samoa. These are the new places. One of the more galling plans in the works is the designation of the MITT, or Mariana Islands Training and Testing Area, which sets aside 1 million square miles of ocean and several islands to receive year-round full-spectrum military practice. Full spectrum means weapons and bombs detonated from every conceivable military perspective. Missiles are launched from destroyers and drones. Bombs are dropped from fighter jets. Torpedoes are shot from submarines. Drones are launched from submarines. Squadrons of tanks lumber onto fragile coral reefs, like we saw at Kaneohe on that film by Juan, crushing the reefs, everything beneath them, and so many other inconceivable practices. There are underwater mine detonations. There's low-frequency sonar, high-frequency sonar, medium-frequency sonar. Thousands of species of fish and invertebrates, and at least 26 marine mammals species will be severely impacted, according to the Navy scientists. This is not just for a few weeks over here, like at PMRF with RimPac. This is year-round military gang rape of Mother Earth. It will cover 1 million square miles of the planet. That's bigger than the areas of Washington, Oregon, California, Idaho, Nevada, Arizona, Montana, and New Mexico combined. And this is just in what's called the Mariana Islands Range Complex. The same sort of thing, but less intensely, will take place in the proposed Hawaii Range Complex, which is 2.1 million square miles. You can also see on this map islands, the places. Here's Jeju Island, Okinawa, Yonaguni, which is part of the Ryukyu chain that Okinawa is part of. That's the southernmost island. It's 99 miles from Taiwan. Subic, is that Subic? No, this is the Spratlys, where there's a lot of conflict going on between China and the Philippines. This and Singapore, where they were putting aircraft carriers and we're making agreements for more militarization there. And Cocos Islands, which is actually a colony of Australia. There's going to be a US drone base. Next slide, please. This is Farallon de Medinilla. It's part of the Mariana Islands chain. It's uninhabited by humans. The 200-acre island hosts breeding colonies of many different migratory birds. Next slide, please. Next slide. Stop. This is a photograph of the island being bombed. They also have masked red-footed and brown boobies, red and white-tailed tropic birds, white and sooty terns, brown and black noddies, and many other species of migratory birds. In 2002, a federal judge issued an injunction halting military activities there because they violated the Migratory Bird Act. Later, Congress overturned the injunction on the grounds of national security. Next slide, please. Hold there. This is a film. Do we have the audio on? Okay. This was a PSA made.
Yeah, I see that there's some restrictions also on FDM. Because before, the early times, they were doing the target on the side of the island. Because I used to see their targets laid on the side of the island, you know. I think that's it's very, very kind of tricky technique, I believe, for them too, because they're hiding it on the side of the island. And I see that they're like breaking down the side of the island. And now, maybe because the public is complaining, they have the target on top of the island now, right in the middle of the island.
Have you noticed that it's changed over the years?
Yes, sir.
How has it changed?
Oh, I can see that if they keep on doing that, FDM will become 2 islands. Now the center of that island is getting more thinner, and I guarantee it's going to collapse.
Next slide. Here we have the Mariana Islands chain. This is Guam at the bottom. It's the largest. Saipan is the capital. It's divided politically here. Down here we have a colony of the U.S. And these upper islands are a commonwealth. And I'm not quite sure what commonwealth means, but they're both controlled by the US. And Farallon de Medinilla is right here. Pagan Island has been in the news lately because it is so, as Julia Nuggan, one of my favorite Chamorro activists, says, deliciously wild. And we'll see some pictures of Pagan. And they're now proposing to use that for a full spectrum military training year-round. It's absolutely gorgeous. Here on the inset, you can see where the Mariana Islands are in relation to the rest of Asia. It's like about 3 hours to any place in Asia by plane. So it's very strategic. Next slide. There's Pagan Island from satellite photo. It's got a live volcano. Next slide. There's a shot of Pagan. Next slide. And these are some of the species found in Pagan. About 7 people live there. It's completely off the grid. Next slide. This is Apra Harbor in Guam. It has a very unique reef, believe it or not, even after it's been so heavily militarized. In fact, there are species in this reef which is very unique because look at this harbor. This is a natural harbor and it's deep water and yet it's very still. So different species can thrive in this very still water that you can't see anywhere else. Next slide. This is an example of what's called elephant ear coral that you can find, elephant ear sponge. Found in Apra Harbor, they're specimens that are 8 feet in diameter. Next slide.
This land, tiny as it is, belongs to us.
This is Guam.
Just as surely, just as inseparably as we belong to it. Approximately 4,000 acres of our land and sea are at risk of being taken for use as an enormous firing range complex. 6.7 million bullets will be fired every year. These bullets will disturb pristine coastline, cultural sites, and surrounding wildlife. For our sacrifice, we get construction contracts given mostly to off-island companies staffed by mostly foreign workers. Guam is our legacy. Is it for sale?
Next slide. So here, just I want to refresh your memory so you can see there's Guam, there's the rest of the islands, and there it is in relationship to Asia. Next slide. And then here you can see there's the Marianas there. And when the Navy wrote their EIS, they said that they asked for permission to do a take or killing of numerous species in this specified zone and a corridor going to the Hawaii Range complex, which is why I drew this there, so that because they actually indicated and were allowed to kill species along here too. And you can see the connection between us and the rest of the Pacific and Asia. Next slide. This is Jeju Island up in Korea. This no longer exists. It was a freshwater bubbling spring on a very Kona-esque rocky lava landscape on the sea. Bubbling fresh water that was, gosh, a century old, because it takes a century to come down from the mountain and filter up. So it's highly filtered, highly pure, highly mineralized, and was tested by some scientists as being more healthful than the springs at Evian. It no longer exists because there's now a base on top. Next slide. This is the mountain top where the water goes down. Next slide. This is adjacent. This is a World Heritage, UNESCO World Heritage site. Next slide. This is one of the famous lady sea divers that originated in Jeju before the tradition migrated to Japan, which made it more famous. Next slide. These are the only pod of dolphins found in Korea who live in this zone who are going to die in the next few years. Only last year did the international cetacean community learn that there were dolphins in Korea. But they're going to be dead in a few years. Next slide. This is an example of the soft coral reef that's now being dredged, or most of it has been dredged. Next slide. This is about 3 years ago, there was a rally of Catholic priests who came to protest at the site of the construction of the base. Next slide. This is what it looked during the construction before the base. It's now about 80% finished. Next slide. This is during construction. Next slide. That's the same place. This is a protest where police were cracking down, injuring many of the villagers. This was about 2 years ago. Next slide. These are priests getting arrested for blocking the cement truck that was going in to build the base. Next slide. This is a farmer getting arrested. Next slide. This is a nun being surrounded by cops, was arrested. This is the mayor of the village, whose family goes back 4,000 years, being harassed by police for... No, that's not Mayor Carvalho. And this guy's totally awesome. And next slide. And these are, they walked, villagers walked from the village, which is an island at the southern tip of the Korean Peninsula, and they did a peace march over 1 month. They walked up the spine, the middle of Korea to Seoul, and picked up protesters along the way till they amassed these people, a lot of people that were protesting other bases, a lot of labor organizers and environmentalists, and it culminated in this rally at the capital in Seoul, which was not covered by the mainstream media in Korea. Next slide. So here again, there's Jeju Island, there's Korea. Okay, next slide. And this is Okinawa. This is the site of a very controversial base called Futenma. Controversial because look at where these civilians live. The planes go so low over. You can see their faces. The children in the playgrounds can see their faces. That's why they drove the Osprey helicopters out, because it was deafening. Next slide. This is the Henoko Bay, which is where they want to build another, I guess it's an Air Force base? Marine base. This is a reef.
They're going to fill in.
Yeah, they're going to fill it in. You're going to talk later. Next slide.
This is a marine base, it's Camp Schwab, but they're going to fill in all of this, and this is the most beautiful reef that I've seen.
Right, and she's a coral specialist, and she's going to talk about that. And this is an endangered species called the dugong, which is a kind of manatee, and that's their habitat. And it's almost like the Amakua of that area. Next slide. And this is a rally that attracted 100,000 people to object to the Osprey helicopters, which is the reason why we are getting them in Hawaii. They will be divided between Hawaii, Australia, Guam, and yeah, those places. Next slide. So there's Okinawa. Okay, next slide. And this is Yonaguni Island. It's the island that's next to Taiwan. Right there. Next slide. And this is Cocos Island, where they're going to build the drone base. Next slide. Okay, stay there. Okay, so to close, we see that the military takes the world's most beautiful and biodiverse places and irreversibly trashes them so that they can no longer support life. How did we... I'm not done. No. I know. I'm closing it up. I know.
Okay, keep going.
This is important. Okay. How did we ever get to this insane point in human history? So capitalism, right, has a lot to do with money, drives infinite expansion of the defense industry, and defense money is what gets people elected. Next slide. Okay, for example, Representative Colleen Hanabusa, who serves on the House Armed Services Committee, says, quote, "The committee's top priority is the safety and security of our country, not just for today, but for the future," end quote. Top donors to Hanabusa include missile manufacturer Lockheed Martin, BAE Systems, and Northrop Grumman. Next slide. Representative Tulsi Gabbard has said that she hopes her military experience will guide crucial decisions, quote, "as we look toward the Asia-Pacific pivot and dealing with threats to our national security," end quote. A member of the House Homeland Security Committee, she received funding from Boeing and BAE Systems. Next slide. Senator Mazie Hirono, who was ironically born in Fukushima, Japan, is a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee and has also received campaign funding from Lockheed Martin. Next slide. In December of last year, Senator Brian Schatz, who received funding from BAE Systems, said, quote, "As the U.S. moves toward a strategic rebalancing to the Asia-Pacific, Hawaii plays an ever increasingly critical role. So I'll wrap it up there, but I just want to close by saying let's rethink security. Security is clean water, clean air, clean environment, a way for us to live as the people in Gangjeong Village, Jeju Island, used to live before they put a base here. Thanks very much.
Right, I'm just going to introduce this a second. This is from the National Resources Defense Council. It's a little blurb that we'd like to show. Pohakuloa shows it. It's about Sonar, and it's narrated by some part-time Kauai resident, Pierce Brosnan. Yeah.
And other marine animals of the ocean. In the darkness of the sea, whales, dolphins, and other marine animals use sound to navigate while mining. High-intensity sonar used by great distances from other areas to locate fine foods can avoid sound.
Let's try it again. Sorry about that.
Full screen.
All right.
Move the arrow off the boss back here. And also down.
The ocean is a world of sound. In the darkness of the sea, whales, dolphins, and other marine animals use sound to navigate while migrating, to locate each other over great distances for mating, to find food, avoid predators, and care for their young. Human technology is now drastically changing this environment, damaging a delicate web of life, threatening the ability of whales and other marine animals to function, and ultimately to survive. High-intensity sonar used by the U.S. and other navies to locate submarines can emit sounds over 235 decibels, as loud as a rocket blasting off. Air guns used for offshore oil and gas exploration emit intense noise bursts that can cover thousands of square miles. Imagine a day in the city, disrupted by excruciating sounds. Sounds so loud, they disorient, paralyzing their ability to function. As we industrialize the marine environment, we are destroying life. Bahamas, March 2000. A U.S. Navy ship blasts high-intensity sonar during training. 16 whales strapped, bleeding around the ears and brain. The U.S. government report concludes the mass mortality was caused by high-intensity sonar. Beaked whales observed there for years, never seen again. Canary Islands, September 2002. 18 whales of 3 different species die on the beach in the wake of international sonar exercise. Washington State, May 2003. Scores of porpoises and killer whales panicked as a U.S. Navy destroyer uses high-intensity sonar, and dead porpoises later are found along the shore. North Carolina, January 2005. 37 whales of 3 different species, some bleeding internally, strand and die along the outer banks after a U.S. sonar exercise. The death toll continues. Canary Islands, 1985, 1988, 1989, 1991, 2004. Japan and stranding since 1960. Greece, May 1996. U.S. Virgin Islands, October. Madeira, May to Brazil, June. Gulf of California, 2000, September. Hawaii, 2000, July 2004. Visit NRDC, the Natural Resources Defense Council, and IFOR, the International Fund for Animal Welfare Online. Make your voice heard.
Aloha kako.
All right. Thanks for your patience with all this technical stuff. Again, we're gonna open up for discussion right after Catherine speaks. This is Catherine Music, who is a marine biologist and a coral specialist, and I'm going to just let this rock out. Go ahead, Catherine, and we'll...
Thank you. I thank you all for being here because it's Saturday, it's first night in Kapa'a, everything else is going on. I know it's so important to be here. And
Can you talk a little closer to the microphone?
yes,
Kiss the mic.
Oh, that's a honu, and this is a honi. Kiss is honi, and that's honu. So the title is Harm or Harmony. And so the theme of my talk is going to be about choice. We can choose. John F. Kennedy said, "Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable." And Martin Luther King said, "An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth leads nowhere other than to a toothless and eyeless generation." And about Vietnam, it was a horribly clumsy and deadly game. And so it's a time to break silence. Silence is betrayal. I'm known as a very talkative person, but I really believe in communication. So I would like to turn on the light. Okay, here's a turtle. And Kuhan told me actually that her name is Ku, the part is turtles. And so, I am here. I'm honored to be here with Juan Wilson and Kuhan, and I was invited because I'm a marine biologist. And so, as a PhD in marine biology, I can give some kind of credence to you. But I accepted the invitation because I love the ocean. So the next slide should show, it's all right. Gordon is giving me 10 minutes, so I'm hoping that he's not... Okay. Well, the other thing, as I sat in the audience, and I saw all this disaster across the Pacific, I was touched by this. Love and joy abound, all our sorrows are forgotten, bravely we go on, and I think that's exactly the opposite. My mother died very miserably with dementia, and I remember everything. And my talk is about how, there we go, how we have to remember. So harmony is what we're after. The question is harm or harmony, and the answer is war is not the answer. We can choose. So if we can get the next slide. Oh, and I want to say thank you not only for all of you being here, but especially to Kalasara Sidesha, who helped me arrange this. I couldn't have done it without her. She's the most beautiful woman I've ever met. There's me trying to be a turtle 65 years ago. My mother and my brother. Yes, they had color film back then. This is in Puerto Rico, and so I put this on as a child. I just loved the ocean, and at this time, 1950, they were bombing Vieques, and I didn't know that. So I saw sea fans. Next slide, please. Oh, no. I decided to become a marine biologist because I thought I could just live near the ocean. Lila, there's a woman here tonight, Lila. I saw these beautiful sea fans, and my PhD is actually on deep sea octocorals of Hawaii. This is off Makapu'u. I went diving down in a submarine, and I found hundreds of new species. Next slide, please. This is corallium. Next slide, please. If you look closely, there are 8 tentacles. So I study octocorals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They have 8 tentacles. And the point of this is that they're very fragile, small polyps of about 1 millimeter, and they can feel vibrations only. They do not have ears and eyes, but they can feel vibrations, and so they can avoid predators or they can find food. Next slide. They're beautiful. There are thousands of species here. I was at the Smithsonian at the time that I was doing this work, and I just talked to my colleagues and I said, send me a list of the species known from Kauai. 57 pages, 872 species in Kauai on our seafloor. We're talking about deep water. When you swim out here, you don't see them, but they're there. Next. This is yes, we have the black corals. The oldest living creature on Earth is a black coral. It's more than 4,274 years old. Next slide. Unlike my octocorals, next slide, these guys have 6 tentacles. They're hexacorals. They're very, very old, and they're very, very vulnerable. Next slide. They're crinoids, they're sea cucumbers, they're crabs, they're fishes. There's so much life there, so far down that we don't even know about it. Next slide. Oh, wait. These are animals. The corals are animals, and so they have sperm and eggs, and the sperm and eggs go into the ocean, and they make a little baby planula. Next slide. This is a planula. Will everyone say planula? There we go. It's like the size of a lentil. It has little hairs all over it, and they use it to swim, and they swim around looking for home. They don't have eyes and ears, but they can hear. It's been shown in the Caribbean that if you play back the sound of crackling shrimp and grunting grunt fish, the planula head over to the coral reef because that's where they want to live. They can hear. So we're talking about an animal that's 1 millimeter long that can listen. This is important because I'm going to bring it up with the sonar. Next, they find a place to live, they settle down, yes, and the next thing they do is put their little skeleton down, yes, and they make a polyp. Next, please. There's a mouth, and doesn't she look just like an underwater flower? Yes, but it's an animal. Next. And they divide, and they divide, and they make a beautiful coral reef. Next. And everything else is hunky-dory. Next. So the little millimeter-long planula can listen And the biggest whale here, we have so many species of whales and dolphins in Hawaii. The humpback leaves, but the sperm whale, for example, is 80 feet long, so that's 24,000 times longer than the planula. The sperm whale is equally sensitive as the tiny planula. And everyone talks about the whales and the sonar, but we've forgotten about the corals. So this immense animal and the tiny planula are RimPac'd. This is a word that you made up. Yeah, they're RimPac'd, and they can't find home, and they can't settle down. And the ones that were there for 4,000 years, or 3,000, or 200 years, can't have the next generation be there. So that's why I'm here tonight, is to be the voice for these voiceless creatures. Next. Here we have it. The RimPac comes and they send their sonar over to find submarines, and it disrupts everything. Not just the whales and the dolphins, but especially the whales and dolphins. Next. The waves are sent and reflected. This is, everyone probably knows this. It's echolocation, and you can go to the Kaho'ola'o website and see this, or go to Wikipedia. You can learn a lot about the sonar. Next. If I whisper, it's 30 decibels, normal conversation, city traffic. The level at which results in hearing loss is 90 to 95 decibels. Decibels were named after Alexander Graham Bell, and this is a logarithmic curve power mower. It looks so small. Today, I was home, and I have a little baby turtle just given to me, and the neighbor was mowing the lawn, and the turtle just climbed out of her place. She was frantic, and I go, wow, it was just a power mower to me. This turtle had such acute hearing, and I thought, wow, we humans measure all this, but we really don't know. The pain begins at 125. This turtle was upset here. And then we have the jet engine, and then we have permanent hearing loss. And what's happening over here during RimPac is that it's all cumulative. We have 235 decibels happening for the whole time. They're shooting out sonar, testing each other. All these countries are coming to supposedly practice together, and they're annihilating the environment of corals and whales and fishes and crabs and crinoids. Say it's gone there. So well,
I'll turn on the lights.
No. You have it? All of you, this is, we're preaching to the choir, so we'll continue until you see the next slide, but I have a couple of quotes that I'll throw in right now. One is from Shakespeare, Julius Caesar, Act 1, Scene 2, page 6. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but we ourselves, that we are the underlings. The whole point of my conversation with you is we have to choose what to do. It's not something else out there. We get to choose. And Margaret Mead said, never believe that a few caring people can't change the world. For indeed, that's all who ever have. And that's why we're here. We are the few people. The low and mid-frequency sonar is what's being used, and it operates at huge decibels. It's 10,000 times louder than a 747 taking off. It's impossible to imagine. Permanent hearing loss, and as Kaua says, a deaf whale is a dead whale. Next. It's just awful. Stress, the animals beach, they're confused, they're frightened, or they have their hemorrhaging inner organs. These are the ones that actually make it to shore. We don't know how many just collapse and go to the bottom of the ocean. Oh, here we go. This is the message. Watch this, it's so cool. There we go. Yeah, say that again, Sam. Never believe that a few caring people can't change the world. Look at those two turtles. Let's give them a high five. And Rachel Carson said, those who contemplate the beauty of the earth find reserves of strength that will endure as long as life lasts. So, Kalasara, thank you so much. Mahalo, and let's remember, let's not pay attention to this. All our sorrows are forgotten bravely, and we go on. No. I was a marine biologist. I named new species in Fiji, my master's degree, in Hawaii, my PhD in Okinawa, where I lived for 11 years, in New Zealand. I have named species, but I've left that occupation because I don't want to name things because they're all dying. In my lifetime, I'm 66. When I was 1 and happy in Puerto Rico, everything was fine. And I've lived in Puerto Rico, which was bombarded. I live in Okinawa, which is crushed. And now I came to Kauai, and it's the same story again and again. So we have to work together and be like those turtles and go forward together. Ma. Hello. Yeah, there are 4 things we can do as humans. We can run away and put our heads in the sand. We can shoot, fire back, or we can communicate. And so I'm choosing to communicate, and you're here because we are communicating.
Thanks, Katie.
Welcome.
And thanks all of you for doing Okay. Horton, that's the only Okay, we're going to pass around the mic, and then Fred Dente has provided this stuff for us.
That's the only mic that's working, so any questions in the audience, you guys should repeat the questions so that it can get onto the television.
Okay,
Thank
we'll repeat the questions then.
Yeah.
All right, so now it's discussion time, and it can be questions or comments, and I'll call on you, and if you have a comment, a specific name, this is Kuhan Catherine Juan. I'm Gordon Lebeds, by the way. And anybody want to start? Yes.
What can we do here in Kauai to help spread this? Like, I know you guys have petitions over there, but what other things, can we do to help stop the sunrise?
The question was, what can we do as individuals and to help stop this kind of stuff that we've been talking about tonight? Anybody want to take that?
I think a short and immediate thing to do is make other people aware of it. One of the things that I think we as a group have found was it was startling how many people don't even know RimPac is going to happen here. I mean, 2 out of 100, 3 out of 100, they don't know anything about it. And I think that it is a big event, and actually we've had very good press recently. Front page story in the TGI, Honolulu news story on TV tonight. There's another story coming out tomorrow. Let people know this is happening. That's really, I think, the base to start from. Because without people knowing about it, it goes by, slips through in the darkness.
Absolutely. I was startled. I've been putting out the notice, and people say RimPac. People that live here, people that are born here, people that moved here, no one seems to have ever heard of it. So that's number 1. And then once you know, we have to act. And that's the next question.
I think that there's 2 answers to that question. Number 1 is the people who decide to pay for this they have names. The name is Tulsi Gabbard, Brian Schatz,
Colleen Hanabusa, they decide, they raise their hand and say, yes, we'll pay for this, we'll take your taxes and we'll pay for this. So don't vote for them, you know, don't vote for them. Vote for anybody but them. You know, unfortunately, you might have to vote for somebody who's worse than them, but that's another issue. But also, I think that I really do strongly agree. In my years in the conservation movement, I found that once you shine light on this kind of stuff, people go, oh, that's not a good idea, let's not do that. And we have to educate ourselves and then educate other people.
Well, and I think I mean, there's something else you can do besides waiting until November to vote for them. You can call their office. I mean, it's on your website, it's in the phone book, for crying out loud. Call them and tell them this is ridiculous. We don't want this going on here in Hawaii. We don't want it going on anywhere, but certainly not here. You know, and actually, we don't want it anywhere.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody heard that, but I'll repeat it. We can call our elected representatives and tell them that we don't think this is a good idea, that military presence in Hawaii, U.S. military in the Pacific, not a good idea. We don't want it for all the reasons that we've been talking about tonight.
I think it's about time that we change the paradigm that destroying the earth and killing people is a good form of employment. We have a lot of political boneheads, like Mufi Hannon, for example. And thank goodness he's not around right now, and you know, you gotta stop the military.
Wait a minute, Ray, he's running for governor.
Yeah, I know, that's what I mean. We got a lot of political boneheads like him. Now, he used to come to our union meetings over the HGA, and he used to tell us that, oh, I dread the day if PMRF closes. You know? But we got to start the conversation with people in our own families, young people, anybody, that war is not the answer for employment. Because the only answer that they have is just like with the GMO companies, jobs. That's what it's all about for them. Because all these guys like Tulsi Gabbard and Brian Schatz and Hanabusa, all these guys receiving money from the corporations that are tied up lock, stock, and barrel with war and militarism. So we have to start the discussion going now. I have to, you know, like I talk about it with my kids, they're sick and tired of hearing about it, but they gotta hear it, you know? And it's slowly catching on, but that's why we're doing this stuff. Now, I was out on the road to the Gordon City, all by myself, with that one sign, Oceans4Peace. But at least they've seen it, you know? They've seen it in the newspaper. Some of them have heard it on the radio, they listen to KKCR, but they've seen it in the newspaper, and they know that it's beginning to develop. And we are going to be a presence against militarism. And I'm really happy because we do have a coalition of a lot of groups, 5 groups, and we can get more, you know. But I think our job is education, of talking to people and getting the word out. Sorry.
Right on. That's Ray Catania from Kauai Alliance for Peace and Justice. Thank you, Ray.
One of the things you may or may not be aware of is that there was an Atlantic Ocean equivalent to the PMRF in Puerto Rico, Vieques Island. And the people there put up so much resistance to the bombing of those islands and to that island and the military presence there that the British and the Americans backed off and closed Vieques Island as a base.
But there are still people there who will suffer from diabetes and obesity, and there's ordnance left over all the time. They pushed them off, and they did. And my talk is about coming from a position of love, and I love the ocean, and I think love is really, really strong. So we love things, and we work together, and we change the paradigm. We're more like Mahatma Gandhi, and we're trying to make everything work out. And Vieques, yes, they did. And Okinawans are so strong. I was in Okinawa last year, and we're going to win this fight. And I'm sorry, but Wuhan, they have the osprey. They think that they have the osprey, and Hawaii didn't get them. We have 12 ospreys over there in Okinawa. the Okinawan people are not going to back down. They're going to win this one. Jeju lost. Jeju had all those Buddhists and Catholic nuns and Ama divers, and they lost it. And Okinawa's not going to let that happen. But they had 100,000 people marching. They care. They have a very strong culture. They care about community. They don't let anybody fall through the cracks. Over here, I've been here 3 years, and it's been really hard because I'm a foreigner, and we have Haoles and Filipinos, and it's very complicated. Okinawans at least are together, and the Puerto Ricans did in the 50s. They beat it back.
If you know anything about our Filipino history, we fight back.
Yes,
yeah?
yes, but
we even die for it.
But a lot of Filipinos send their stuff back home. It's not here. No. But a lot of Filipinos, I know. But this island is a perfect melting pot, they said, or a scrambled salad. We have the opportunity right now. We have people like Terry Lilly, and we have people like Juan and myself and you. We are very intelligent and sensitive people, and our job is to get together and win this one.
Right on. Back there.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for being here. This is really good. I wish we were kind of doing this 3 years ago. My name is Terry, and I'm a local marine biologist here, but I just wanted to give some new scientific facts that I think will help everyone. I've been doing this study since the RimPac exercise of 2011. At RimPac in August 2011, they changed their sonar and their Doppler radar frequencies in August of 2011. In September of 2011, we broke out with the worst coral disease anywhere in the world. I've documented now killing way over 3 million corals on the North Shore of Kauai. We now have a complete reef collapse going on at Tunnels, Honolulu, and Inini. I have underwater video on all of this, thousands and thousands of hours of this whole entire process happening. We don't know what's killing the coral. It gets infected by these bacteria. We recently now know what's going on out here. The Doppler radar towers, when they use this high energy frequency Doppler radar, and we have some of the best chemists in the entire world that just supplied all these documents, are going to go to the state legislature. And I'll tell you real quick other things that you guys can help with. Anyway, when the Doppler radar hits the water, it bends. It actually turns the frequency into a microwave. The coral polyp tissues here, me and Dr. Terry work and Greg Abbey at UH, we did over 500 coral polyp samples here. All of the coral polyps have tears in them, just like the whales do, have tears in their inner ears when they get killed. Basically, the Doppler radar is microwaving the reef here, and it's killing the entire reef. Within about 3 years from now, we're going to have a complete die-off, 100% dead reef on the North Shore of Kauai. And I could easily, I've been testifying in the federal building now for 6 months on this in Honolulu, with Tulsi Gabbard, with all of these people, all the way to the governor and the head of the DLNR. So anyway, we now have that data showing how the Doppler radar is frying the reefs, why it's killing the corals. It's even killing the crustose coral and algae that holds the reef together. That's why there's been 2 to 3 ton parts of the reef on the Honolulu ledge that just fell off the reef, that I just took movies and posted them up worldwide. Also, then the sonar underneath, they changed the frequency of the sonar in September 2011. Both of these now, what the guys did that have the best reports ever done in the world on the effects of Doppler radar to living tissue, what they did is they took our 4 major Doppler radar towers here. They showed where all the beams are going, like really quickly, like Nu'ulola down in the Kaua coastline. Nu'ulola, the entire bay has been fried and killed. Okay, you go around the corner to Mililiki, and the bay is still, and the corals look very healthy. It's because Mililiki is blocked by the tower right up there on Kaua, where Nu'ulola is not. So they overlaid the Doppler radar onto the Google Earth 4,000 points that me and Greg Abbey from UH have posted so far. And sure enough, the actual Doppler radar, where it hits the ocean, is correlating to the worst part of the death and the reef die-off. So the science is available if you folks want to use it. I have all these links. I've got a radio show in Honolulu every week. It's being monitored by the governor and every politician. And you can communicate with me. There's ways of stopping this through the Endangered Species Act, Clean Water Act, and Marine Mammal Protection Act. I used to teach environmental law. And I have 4 major attorneys, including one of my best friend family, funds the NRDC. and all of this stuff's been going into them every single day. So anyway, there's a lot of good stuff here. If you guys want to connect, I'll send the links to you. My email's simple, it's to everyone. It's just underwater2web@gmail.com. And we have over 99 movies posted on Google on this stuff.
And Facebook too.
And Facebook. It's all free for everyone to use.
I'm just curious, how, with all the amount of data that you're collecting, all the time and so on, how can you possibly do this with small budgets, or do you have enough of a budget to do it? I'm looking at the difference between what you and the rest of us are doing here with nickel and dime versus what the military is doing with our tax dollars.
That's a great question. I spent $160,000 of my own money on this study, over 1,000 hours underwater over the last 3 years, and I've raised over $250,000, which is being implemented in an underwater testing that went on Vegas Island. So we don't have a lot of money, but we do. But hold on for just 1 second. Yeah, and one of the problems we've had is that the current governor and the current mayor get a lot of money into Kauai and Hawaii from the military, and they've been trying to block these studies now for 3 solid years straight. Cat's out of the bag. One of my best friends is running for governor for the state of Hawaii. And Dustin Barca, he knows all about this stuff. I'm filling him in every single day on these things. We can change the political elections. We can get this stuff stopped through the current environmental laws, working with some very powerful attorneys that are dealing with it right now.
Can you talk about the Endangered Species Act real quick?
Yeah, just really quick, and I will do that one. The Endangered Species Act very simply says anything that has the likelihood of altering the feeding, breeding, nesting, or behavior of even one endangered species against the law, everybody has to follow the act, including the President of the United States. The only way around it if he declares a national emergency. It's the only way to void out the Endangered Species Act. Our turtles are getting tumors, the testing that we're doing, the dead turtles, the frequency on the corals, all this stuff. We need good, hardcore scientific data, and that's what I've been trying to produce with the USGS, NOAA, and University of Hawaii. So it can work. Yeah.
So one thing I would like to suggest is that we as a group, the most potent portion of the government is we the people.
Yep.
We are actually the first branch of government. So we actually, if we can organize, the military is extremely organized. I mean, if you look at what they are doing, they're extremely organized. They're extremely powerful with their money. We need to be able to change the paradigm so that, let me just finish now.
I'll show you how we're doing this.
I just want to say that we're going to go till 8 o'clock, and I'd like other people to participate. So thanks, Terry. At 8 o'clock, I'm going to, unless there's a groundswell to continue, I'm going to stop. It's 20 of 8, so let's keep going. Other comments, questions?
I'm just thinking, maybe if we direct the attention of the military to the problems of Fukushima and to the problem of the gyres out there in the Pacific, it's like they have a way of shutting us down because we are no to this, no to that. But if we're more like directing them to fix something, maybe that's some way to go.
I'll donate money to that effort. I'll pay taxes for that.
Right. In Okinawa, there's the place that Kuhan showed. It's called Henoko Bay, and the Americans are trying to put a base on top of the most beautiful coral reef left in Okinawa. Instead of fighting the base, we are going to make it into a marine protected area. So do something positive. Is that exactly right? Instead of always saying, no, stop, we have to do something positive. That's right. And the Pacific gyres, there's 5 of them. The garbage patches are huge. The radioactivity is huge. It's all terrifying. I don't think we have very many years left for corals or whales or people. This is very serious right now. That's why I'm here. We have to do something, all of us.
This organization, this coalition, has had money set aside to make radio commercials, and they're $35 an ad, and I would like to, if you guys want to make a contribution, I'd like to get as many of these ads out there to educate the public as possible, and they're $35 a piece, and if that's something, a contribution you'd like to make, that would be ever so helpful for getting people
Thank you. Diana is going to read radio ads on Kong Radio for about RimPac, sponsored by the Surfrider Foundation and Oceans4Peace.org. Yes.
I have a question for Kaua. I started late. I was supposed to be here, but I had an emergency. But
That's
anyway.
not a good excuse.
Okay. I'll tell you why I'm late later.
Okay.
My question to you is that because I know a little bit about your history. Okay, I heard what you said in a short time I was there in connection with what's going on in connection with demonstrations and parties. Okay, but at the same time, we're getting a lot of print in connection with what's going on supposedly with China and Japan, with China and the Philippines, and with China and Vietnam. We're hearing a lot of news about the South China Sea, East China Seas, etc. You should know me by now that I'm very familiar with what happened in the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. What's going on really in this area, because I'm afraid that all of these things are going to be used as a reason why America will do everything what you guys are afraid of. America will say, look, we have all these things going on with China, we need to develop it. So what is the take? Is there something going on that we should know about? Because even Henry Kissinger is predicting that there's going to be war between Japan and China. I'm not saying I agree with them, but there is all of this activity going on at the same time. They're doing all of these things which obviously are very bad for nature.
Okay, well, have you guys heard about all the skirmishes in the South and the East China Sea? Okay, so what it is, just an overview, is that China is, they believe, well, it's all about resources, right? China has become a capitalist country, and in order to be a capitalist country, you must continually expand, and in order to continually expand, you have to continually drill for resources. Where are you going to get your resources? You're going to get them in undersea mining, especially around these islands. What do our computers use? Our computers are dependent on the rare earth minerals that are found under the ocean. Now the US wants those too, so it really is a competition. Like, what don't we know about? Well, I think what we don't know about is that when it's in the news, it's framed as China bullying the neighbors, but what it really is that China's bullying the neighbors that we've been bullying all along for resources. And so it was interesting, I read an article about from a senator in the Philippines who was talking to his fellow Filipinos saying, you know, watch out, it looks like, you know, that the U.S. is signing, they just signed a military agreement that they can have continual presence, military presence in Subic Bay, and the Filipinos are very excited about it. And the senator said, the islands that are being protected, that you think are being protected by the United States, were claimed by the Philippines after the signing of a document, an agreement with the US like years ago, and so they're basing the current military agreement on this other agreement. And because these islands that are now being disputed came across after that, then they're exempt. The US protecting them is exempt from helping out the Philippines in time of war. Like if they do get in a skirmish, the US isn't going to step in and fight, because the US actually doesn't want to be fighting on the part of Japan or the Philippines or Vietnam or anyone against China, because if we get in a war with China, forget it. So what the Filipino senator was saying is, don't be so gung-ho and think you're going to get American protection. You're not going to get American protection. So, every situation is different. South Korea has a different relationship with Asia and with the U.S. Japan has a very, very problematic relationship with the rest of Asia and is like the Israel of Asia in the sense that it does all of the U.S.'s bidding. And so I think, I didn't know Henry Kissinger was still alive, but I could see, China just bashed a Vietnamese fishing boat and sunk it. I don't take sides for China just because I object to the behavior of the U.S. Both of them are superpowers hungry for control because they're both capitalist countries that want to expand, and they're both huge. And what that does is it squeezes out the environment and the people on the ground.
Susan, for you also, with this agreement between Russia and China about supplying their basic energy needs, that will sort of change the equilibrium in the area. And one of the interesting things about RimPac is the Norwegians coming in, and apparently the warming of the Arctic means that Greenland is looking for, oh goody goody, we are going to be exploited for our rare mineral earth. So
I think all of these stories, she was saying that as the ice caps are melting, we're noticing that Norway is now participating for the first time in RimPac. And so Norway definitely has a lot of presence in the Arctic, and as the ice caps melt, there's going to be a lot of drilling there. And I think what all these different stories point to is that the real enemy isn't the US military. The real enemy is the system called capitalism, where you make money off of money, off of money. So I think fundamentally, the best thing we can do is smash capitalism.
We're back there? Yeah.
Thank you for shining the light on RimPac, but I also kind of want to share the concern and spread the lay of prayer to Kaua Island. It's an incredible cultural site. It's a heiau. It's environmentally precious, and the military calls it a target island. And they've increased the bombing of it. They've doubled the bombing of Kaua Island. It's inert ordnance, they call it, but it still has significant impact to the critters and to the people of Niihau that have to watch this. So
you might want to think about occupying the island, because that was Kaua.
Dustin Marca can speak.
Oh, Dustin Marca can speak to that.
Aloha. I mean, I don't know enough about the issues to be talking out loud and making too many public claims about what's going on. I know what's going on is wrong. I know what's going on is, our islands has become an experimental test site for so many things on so many different levels that, the only solution is by coming together and demanding that we don't want that anymore. And I truly believe that unity and demanding the things we want in numbers is the only way we're going to deal with our problems here on our island. If that's from chemical experiments to military experiments to drilling experiments, we're at so many different levels of experimental that we've kind of come to a pinnacle in life. And it's not just here on Kauai, it's all over the world. And it has to do with, knowing what's going on in the world and being on top of that and thinking global but acting local. And that's, one of our biggest things right now is thinking global and acting local. Like, if you're on our, your social media, as you're following these, thank God we have social media because we're learning about the world and we're learning about things that our local news would never ever show us, ever. Who knows why we call it news, but luckily we have these other news sources that are teaching us about what's going on around the world, consistently teaching us about what's going on in the world. The global movement's a really good one for us on Instagram. If you have Instagram, it's, you gotta keep up with the technology. Some of us are, some of us aren't, and God bless you who aren't, because, in that zombie world that some of us are in. But, these, luckily we have these sources that are teaching us about what's going on in the world, and that's really lighting a fire under a lot of our butts, yeah, because we're learning about what's going on around the world and how it's affecting us locally instead of just staying in our little boxes and bubbles and whatever you want to call it. It's time to think outside of the box for us here on Kauai and looking for the different solutions and standing together and really, fighting against what we don't want, but fighting against it in the right ways. Yeah, we cannot be violent. We cannot demand. We can demand, but we got to do it in the right way. Yeah? We got to do it out of love. We got to do it with aloha. And when you do it in those ways, we cannot be threatened in a life-threatening way. Yeah? And if they do it, they'll look horrific to the rest of the world. So I personally think with Kaula and other issues, we need to look at people like, Uncle Walter and people who saved Kaho'olawe and look at their blueprint on how they saved an island and its natural resources. And, we're seeing the effects already. The water table's broken on Kaho'olawe and it's a unreversible thing. So for us, if we want to save Kaula, it takes people going out of their comfort zones, uniting and fighting for the island. We've done a good job at fighting for things that are worth fighting for on this island, and I think by coming together for the island, for our island, for that island, for Ni'ihau, anything we have to do, and we don't like what's going on, the only way we're going to do it is by coming together, ku'e, come together, and fighting with love. Yeah? So that's about all I got to say. And you got a question on this?
We're having a tribute to Pete Seeger at the end of this month. The reason why I bring it up is we are going to show a film that shows the last part of his life was involved in environmental issues. And he and his friends built a beautiful sailing boat called the Clearwater, which sailed up and down the Hudson River and carried children of all ages and educated them about the pollution that was going on in the river. And this began to clean up the river. And there's a portion of a film we're going to show that shows this being done. And I would like to suggest that possibly we should invest in a sailing vessel that can sail around this island, and in fact, right in the middle of RimPac, if possible. With every kind of educational material available, taking children, taking anybody that wants to get on board.
I think Dustin Barca is running for mayor, by the way, in case you didn't know. And he summed up what we're talking about tonight. I really like that campaign promise. Let's come together and demand stopping the things we don't like. Sounds like a plan. Let's come together. That's what Oceans4Peace.org is about, and we're going to keep going through RimPac, so keep in touch. And okay, the sign waving once again is January 21st, summer solstice. I keep saying January. June 21st, summer solstice. June 18th, we're going to paint signs at 6 o'clock at Lidgate Park. That's right, June 18th. All right, last announcement, right here. Go ahead.
Website, and so you can sign up and be on our email list, and we can send you out the information when we are having sign waves, when we're going to have rallies, when we're going to have teaching, when we're going to have movies. That would be the most helpful, if we can help you to make a difference.
Sign the Pohakuloa whale voice, that table right over there. Sign their email list, and you'll get a note from us. Thanks, everybody.